Hi, I'm Seth Clark, head of product here at Modzy, and excited to spend a couple minutes walking you through our product and telling you more about what Modzy does. Modzy is a machine learning platform that's really designed to help you optimize the delivery, deployment, and interconnections of machine learning across your entire enterprise. And we do that by making it really easy to deploy models into a central environment, uh, integrate those models into the products and tools and applications that need machine learning capabilities, and the management and governance tools necessary to keep those models healthy and operational. So let's just dig right in and see what that looks like. What you're looking at right now is our model marketplace. You can think of this as kind of home base for all the different machine learning capabilities across your enterprise. This can include a whole host of different kinds of machine learning models, computer vision-based models, natural language processing models, language translation, signal processing, really a whole host of different capabilities. And these models can include some commercial models that Modzy offers out of the box. These can be licensed individually to offer augmented capabilities to your organization, such as image classification, object tracking, language translation, as we talked about. This can include open source models from the open source community. But most importantly, it also can include your organization's in-house models. Modzy provides the mechanism for you to have your own private internal model repository, collecting and integrating and organizing all the different machine learning models that are being developed across your organization. This could include models from different business units, models from other data science teams. And this centralized hub makes it a lot easier to share capabilities with different teams, and also helps reduce rework. There's no model multiple times. So this whole capability really makes it an ideal place for data science teams to collaborate and share and deploy their models. But also for software development teams to have a central hub for all the machine learning capabilities that they need to deploy across the myriad of systems that are looking for machine learning capabilities, from custom web applications to mobile apps to data processing pipelines. All of those different types of applications can consume the models that are stored and deployed here in Modzy. The other thing I'll mention is that Modzy can also run in just about any piece of infrastructure that you have. So if you want to use Modzy in a public cloud environment, have at it. We support AWS and Azure, and have other commercial cloud providers on the roadmap as well. In addition to that, you can also deploy it on-premise in a completely disconnected environment. Wherever you need your machine learning capabilities to run, Modzy can support that. Now let's dig in and look at what each of these models looks like. If we want to use a capability like an overhead building detection model, perhaps we're doing some analysis to better understand the roof area available for solar panels in a big metropolitan area. You could use a model like this overhead building detection model to calculate the roof area of a whole city, and use that information to figure out how much potential solar capacity there might be in that area. You'll see here that for every model within the Modzy marketplace, both the commercial models as well as the models that you deploy, we have a really detailed page. We call it the model biography, that provides an overview of this model. This includes not only information about how this model works, but we document things like the performance of this model, both in terms of quantitative performance metrics, as well as a description of the way this model was created, the kind of data set that it was trained on, and its relative strengths and weaknesses. Because we think it's really important for models to be easy to understand, and really to remove that idea that machine learning has to be a black box. It does not. And that transparency is really going to help organizations better use these capabilities by building trust across the whole enterprise. This also includes the technical details about how this model was built, from the frameworks that were used, research papers that were referenced, the training data set that was used in the training process, and even what kind of hardware may have been used. All of this information can be really useful in deciding whether a model is going to do the job you need it to do. Finally, each of these models includes a copy and pastable API call that you can submit to actually start processing data against the model. Every single one of the models in Modzy has its own API endpoint and is specific to that model's capabilities. So in this case, all we have to do is really submit the location of an image. In this case, we're using an S3 bucket, to this aerial building segmentation model, and it's going to generate a response. And we can actually see what that response looks like here. So we'll get bounding boxes as well as a mask for every single building that's detected. This is really cool because now we've created a mechanism where data scientists can hand off a machine learning model that a software developer can then consume and integrate into the system that actually needs to use that model. This is really going to increase the speed at which teams can operate and the speed at which machine learning models can be deployed into critical systems. In addition to that, each of these models includes a detailed version history. So as you develop new versions of models, make improvements and updates, all of those improvements, changes, and updates are documented in a common way. So you get the full transparency and the full history of all the different models that you've deployed to Modzy. Now let's talk about what it looks like to actually deploy a model into Modzy. Well, if you're deploying your own model as a data scientist, there's just a couple of things you need to do to get your model into Modzy. The first is to containerize that model into one of Modzy's standard ML containers. We've created a bunch of different templates in GitHub that make it very easy for you to take your code, whether you've written a TensorFlow model in Python or built something really custom in C++. Whatever you've done, you can take that code and drop it into a standard Docker container that we've defined for you. And that container then can be deployed into Modzy and be run, scaled, and managed within the same environment. So you can have C++ models living next to Python models, living next to R models, living next to Fortran models, if you have a reason to use that language. And all of them can interact on the same cluster because of Modzy's interaction layer. Once you've packaged up a model, you can then deploy it through a model deployment pipeline. All you have to do is essentially tell us what kind of hardware this model needs to be able to run. Choosing the smallest footprint possible helps conserve resources. If you put a model on that smallest footprint and all of a sudden a huge increase in requests for your model starts to hit the system, then Modzy will just horizontally scale multiple instances of this hardware. In my case, this is a really simple model, so we can get away with using a small CPU-based instance with just a couple of cores and a few gigs of RAM. For bigger models, you may choose one or more GPU instances. Once you've chosen your desired hardware, you really just have to then define the inputs and outputs for a model. Essentially, that's just to tell Modzy what kind of data it takes in and then what kind of data it generates. With just that information, Modzy then has all the info it needs to create a custom API endpoint so that anyone with access can now start using your model. The last thing you need to do is just define some basic documentation for your model's biography page. This includes a title and descriptions, version information so that you can keep track of how the model is improving over time, performance metrics and technical details like we showed you before, and then the final output will include these API request and response snippets automatically generated by the product. Once you're happy with your model, you can actually go ahead and publish it and view this model in its detail page. So we'll go ahead and take a look at this final model that we just deployed. Here we see our low light object detection model successfully deployed into Modzy, made by our fake company Skyforge, and now available to the other software developers across Skyforge for use in a range of different drone-based applications or sort of in-house enterprise applications. Now, once you've deployed a bunch of models to Modzy, you're going to need a way to manage them. And that's where all of our AI management tools come to play. So the first place to start is the AI model management page. This provides a full list of all the different AI models that have been deployed in your instance of Modzy. And again, this can include the commercial models that you may have purchased or your own in-house custom-built models. For each of these algorithms, you'll see overall summary statistics, including the number of jobs that they've completed. A job basically represents one batch of data that's been submitted to that model for processing. With this vehicle detection model, we've processed 35 jobs. We can see this was a Modzy model. It's been processed about 1.3 megs of data, and 2 different users have been consuming it. What you'll also see is that each model in Modzy provides customizable auto-scaling settings. So if you need max speed and low latency, you can increase the number of processing engines available for each model. If I set this to 1, it means that there's one instance of this model always running. which means it's going to be really, really fast and really, really responsive. We also have an upper limit to say how high it can go. If you start increasing the amount of traffic that this model is seeing, you can increase the number of instances it can scale up to. And here we've updated our scaling to 3. So that means we'll have 1 always on, but if the number of requests starts to increase, we'll turn this all the way up to 3. In other cases, if you have a fixed footprint or are really trying to minimize costs, you can turn the minimum number of processing engines down to 0, which turns off the models as soon as the last piece of data available has been processed. And that helps free up additional space for other models, or just turns off instances in AWS, Amazon, or other cloud providers to help keep costs low. Administrators also have the tools to be able to approve which models are active or inactive, or which models have expired, which means that an enterprise can make sure that only the best models that are up to date and meeting enterprise requirements are available across the rest of the systems that want to use them. All of this is secured through our use of API keys. Every action and activity taken on Modzy has to be validated against a valid API key. Each individual user has an API key, and what we can see here is that that key provides a set of roles and permissions. So I have a range of different roles, from data scientist to system owner to account administrator, which gives me a lot of different capabilities. I also have a high priority approval for our high priority key, which means my jobs get moved to the top of the queue. These API keys allow the right users with the right permissions to use Modzy in all of its different models. Additionally, you can use system API keys or system account keys to make sure that certain systems only have access to certain models or can only use certain amounts of infrastructure. This makes it a lot easier to manage which enterprise applications, from ERP tools to case management to content management systems, that need to use different capabilities. You can use these account keys to make sure that you're managing all of that AI consumption in a centralized and easy to manage way. Finally, everything is logged and audited for detailed review. You can access every single job that's been processed over time through our job history interface. This provides detailed information on every job that was processed. And if you have the permission to view this information, you can actually see the results that were generated. So in this case, we submitted a model to this image classification algorithm, or we submitted data to this image classification algorithm from a base 64 encoding. And this was the output that was generated. We think this was a hammerhead shark, and we actually provided a mask. This information is really helpful for analysis after an event, for compliance purposes, for security purposes, and generally for good model management. This provides great feedback so that over time, as a model starts performing worse due to drift, you get really good data to help validate and inform future improved model training. Finally, we also provide a range of capabilities through our model operations page, which we'll be able to show you very shortly. And this includes tools to help you manage your overall cluster health, manage the consumption and usage of your models, and have detailed view into the entire operating system as it's running hundreds or thousands of different models at a time. The last thing I'll share here is our documentation page. So as a data scientist, we've provided a lot of really easy to use documentation and tutorials so that you have all the information you need to be able to deploy a model into Modzy. And you can do that either manually, like we showed you before, or you can tie Modzy into one of the model training tools you like to use. So if you use MLflow or SageMaker or another model training tool, you can actually use our documentation to help you build an automated deployment pipeline so that when you're done training your model and you're happy with it, you can actually automatically build a container that gets pushed into Modzy and is immediately available for enterprise use and deployment. Similarly, for software developers, our documentation provides a lot of information about all of the various API endpoints, as well as some tutorials on how to create custom integrations for Modzy. You might want to build a custom integration to tie Modzy models into your geospatial intelligence product. You maybe want to tie it into a case management system, perhaps use it for content management on SharePoint. There's a range of different use cases that you might have for using these machine learning models, and our API and SDK documentation makes it really easy for you to do so. Well, that's everything we want to show you today on Modzy. We hope you're as excited as we are to give it a shot. and try it out. And we look forward to your feedback on how you want to use Modzy to help you operationalize machine learning. Thanks so much.